The morning of the wedding began with a soft golden light spreading across the countryside venue, the kind of light that made everything look calm, peaceful, and almost unreal. The large hall stood in the middle of a green open space, surrounded by tall trees that swayed gently with the breeze. Workers moved in and out of the building, carrying trays, checking decorations, and making sure every tiny detail looked perfect for the special day. Among them walked a young waitress named Lena, dressed in a simple black uniform, with her hair tied neatly behind her head. She looked like any other staff member, quiet, polite, and focused on her tasks, but there was a softness in her eyes that made her a little different from the rest. The wedding was not small. It was the kind that required weeks of planning, pages of instructions, and a whole team to keep everything running smoothly. The bride and groom were from well-known families, the type who wanted everything perfect, elegant, and impressive. The hall was decorated with fresh flowers, long white curtains, and shiny lights that gently sparkled above the tables. Musicians were supposed to perform on a raised platform near the front of the hall, and beside the platform stood a grand piano, polished so perfectly that it reflected the room like a mirror. When Lina first walked past the piano that morning, she stopped without even realizing it. Her hand tightened around the tray she was carrying. She stared at the smooth black surface, then at the keys that were partly visible from where she stood. For a moment, she forgot everything around her, the noise, the instructions, the rush. The piano seemed to pull her toward it, the same way a strong memory pulls someone back into their past. But she forced herself to move on, reminding herself that she was only there to work, not to look at instruments or get lost in memories. Throughout the morning, she focused on her duties, placing glasses on the tables, checking that every napkin was folded the correct way, and helping set up the drink stations. The wedding planners were strict, giving orders in quick, sharp voices. They reminded the staff again and again to follow the schedule, stay in position, and avoid unnecessary movement during the ceremony. They wanted everything to feel smooth, controlled, and perfect. But even while she worked, Lena's eyes drifted back to the piano every chance she got. She didn't touch it, not even once. She only looked at it from a distance, thinking about how long it had been since she last played. She remembered her own piano at home, a smaller one, old and wooden, with a couple of broken keys. She remembered the sound it made when she practiced after school, the warmth she felt whenever her fingers moved over the keys. But that life felt far away now, hidden under bills, responsibilities, and the quiet pressure of taking care of her family. She had left her music studies long ago, and sometimes she wondered if she would ever get the chance to return. Yet today, the piano standing in the hall felt like a reminder of something she once loved deeply, but had slowly pushed aside as the day went on. Guests began arriving. Cars rolled up to the entrance, one after another, and people dressed in colorful, shiny outfits stepped out with smiles and excitement. Children ran around in small groups, laughing loudly. Older relatives hugged each other, sharing stories they had not told in years. The bride's friends posed for pictures, holding bouquets and adjusting each other's dresses. Everywhere there was life, movement, and noise. Inside the hall, the musicians began warming up. Soft notes from violins touched the air, and the keyboardist practiced a few chords. The atmosphere felt light, almost magical. The wedding organizers walked around checking everything, speaking into their headsets, making sure the ceremony would begin exactly on time. Lina continued working with the same quiet rhythm. She was polite to the guests, smiling when spoken to, even though her mind kept drifting to that piano. Every time she passed it, she slowed down just a little. She imagined touching the keys, imagined how they might feel under her fingertips. But she quickly reminded herself, "You're here to serve, not to play." She repeated those words silently. almost like a rule she had written for herself. No one among the staff knew anything about her past with music. To them, she was simply another worker trying to earn a living. She did not talk much, and even when she did, she rarely shared anything personal. Not because she was unfriendly, but because she had learned over time that life was easier when she kept things to herself. People could misunderstand, judge, or simply not care. So it was better to stay silent, do the job, and leave when the shift ended. The real wedding ceremony, the part where the bride walks down the aisle, was set to happen outdoors, under a decorated arch near the garden. Staff members were already preparing the chairs and guiding guests to their places. Lena was assigned to help arrange the drink table for after the ceremony. She worked quietly, placing the bottles in neat rows and checking that the glasses were spotless. From where she stood, she could hear soft background music from the rehearsal. The singer, who was meant to perform a special song during the couple's entrance, practiced her notes with confidence. Her voice carried across the garden, strong and clear. Guests turned their heads toward the sound, impressed. Lena listened for a moment, and a faint sadness touched her heart. She remembered how she once dreamed of performing on stages, playing pieces she had practiced for months. But those dreams had slowly faded into the distance. She didn't let the sadness stay long, though. She knew she had responsibilities, and life had taken a different direction for her. As the sun climbed higher, everything seemed ready. The wedding planners looked relieved, even proud. They gathered the staff and repeated the rules. Stay in position. Follow instructions. No personal involvement. No stepping outside. Assigned duties. No touching the instruments or speaking to the musicians unless necessary. They wanted everything smooth and perfect, without any surprises. Inside the hall, the piano stood silently, waiting for the moment it would be used later during the reception. It looked almost lonely in the middle of all the decorations. And although Lena didn't say a word, somewhere deep inside her, the sight of it stirred a feeling she hadn't felt in years. The feeling of longing, of wanting to touch a part of her old self again. The guests slowly moved toward the outdoor garden area where the ceremony was about to start. Laughter, chatter, footsteps, all of it mixed into one warm, lively sound. But in the middle of it all, Lena worked quietly. Her movements were steady, gentle, almost careful. Even though she looked calm, she carried a heavy story inside her, one that no one around her knew. The story of a girl who had once been full of dreams, who had loved music more than anything, but life had forced her onto a different path. She had never complained. She had accepted her responsibilities with maturity, even though she was still very young. She told herself that she would return to music one day, maybe when things got better at home, maybe when there were fewer bills to pay. But time passed, and that day never came. Still, she never stopped listening to music. Whenever she had a quiet moment, she would close her eyes and imagine herself playing again. Her fingers would move softly in the air, as if remembering the forgotten melodies. And sometimes she believed that if life gave her even the smallest chance, she would take it without hesitation. But at the wedding, no one knew any of this. To the guests, she was invisible. To the staff, she was ordinary. To the planners, she was just a worker following instructions. But the piano knew her story, or at least, it felt like it did. Every time she passed it, a quiet voice inside her whispered, "This is who you are. This is what you love." Yet she kept walking past it, telling herself, not today, not here, not for someone else's wedding. She didn't know that fate had something unexpected planned for her, something that would test her courage, her choices, and her connection to the music she had buried deep inside her heart. For now, the day went on with calm, normal movements. The ceremony began. Guests settled into their seats, and the staff waited for instructions. Everything looked perfect, peaceful, and predictable. But life rarely stays predictable. And for Lina, the first shift of the day was only the beginning of something she never imagined would happen. Something that would change not only the wedding, but her own life in a way she had never thought possible. The sun was now high in the sky, casting a warm, golden light over the wedding garden. The guests had all settled into their seats, their faces bright with excitement and curiosity. Children whispered to each other and tried to sneak glimpses of the bride as she prepared for her entrance. Older relatives chatted quietly, comparing dresses, commenting on the flowers, and laughing at small family stories. The atmosphere seemed perfect, calm, and full of anticipation. It was everything a wedding was supposed to be. Inside, behind the scenes, the staff moved quietly, making sure everything ran smoothly. Lina had returned to her station, but her mind was still partially on the piano she had glimpsed earlier. She kept telling herself to focus on her work, to follow instructions, and to stay invisible. But her eyes kept drifting toward that shiny black instrument, feeling the pull of something familiar, something that had been missing in her life for years. Just as she was straightening the glasses on one of the tables, a sudden commotion reached her ears. A staff member rushed in, whispering urgently to the manager. The singer who was supposed to perform during the bride's entrance had suddenly lost her voice. No one was sure why. Some said she had caught a cold. Others said the nerves had simply overwhelmed her. Either way, it was clear that the music, a crucial part of the ceremony, was now in jeopardy. The manager's face turned pale, and he started pacing back and forth. He spoke quickly into his headset, trying to find a replacement, but it was too late. Every professional he contacted was either unavailable or too far away to make it on time. The atmosphere shifted almost immediately. The calm, golden morning had turned tense. Staff whispered to one another, trying to figure out what to do, while the guests outside noticed the delay and began to murmur among themselves. Lina felt her stomach tighten. She knew the situation was critical. She watched as the managers. Worry grew with every passing second. She could see the panic in his eyes, the tight lines of stress on his forehead, the way he wrung his hands almost unconsciously. The singer sat to the side, embarrassed and frustrated, hiding her face behind a handkerchief. The guests outside, though they didn't know the details, could feel that something was wrong. The delicate flow of the ceremony was starting to break, and a subtle unease spread through the garden. For a moment, Lina froze, unsure of what to do. Her first instinct was to keep her head down, to stay invisible, and let the professionals handle the problem. She had never been part of a crisis like this before. But then her gaze shifted to the piano. That familiar pull grew stronger, almost demanding her attention. Her hands itched to touch the keys, her fingers remembering the movements she had practiced for so many years. A small, quiet voice inside her whispered that this was her chance, perhaps the one she had been waiting for without realizing it. The manager turned to the staff again, his voice sharp and tense. "We need anyone to fill in. Call the musicians. Find a replacement. Do not delay the ceremony any further." But it was clear that no one had the ability to step in. Some staff exchanged nervous glances, muttering that none of them could play an instrument, let alone a piano, at such a professional level. Lina felt her heart pound. She swallowed hard, trying to calm the sudden rush of fear and excitement that surged through her. For years, she had hidden her talent, telling herself that life was about responsibility, not dreams. But now, she realized that hiding would not help anyone, not the couple, not the guests, not herself. She knew that if no one acted, the ceremony could be ruined. And somehow, deep down, she felt that she was meant to act. She stepped forward slightly, catching the manager's eye. I can play," she said quietly. Her voice was soft but steady. She didn't explain yet, Didn't tell him her story. She only said enough to make him turn and look at her, surprised. What did you say? The manager asked, clearly doubting her. His brow furrowed. You're a waitress. This isn't part of your job. I know, Lena replied her, hands clasped in front of her. But I can play the piano. I know the songs you need. I can help. The room fell quiet. Some staff members exchanged skeptical looks. Others laughed softly, thinking she was joking. The manager shook his head, muttering, This is ridiculous. A waitress cannot just play for a wedding. He glanced at the singer, who was nervously wringing her hands. Do you hear me? Ridiculous. Lena took a deep breath. She had anticipated this reaction. She knew it would take courage not just to step forward, but to insist calmly that she could help. She looked around at the room full of anxious faces, and for a moment she thought of all the people who would be disappointed if the music did not happen. She thought of the bride and groom, the guests, and even herself. Then she said, Please, just let me try. I can play. The manager hesitated. He looked at her for a long time, clearly weighing his options. The clock was ticking, and the ceremony could not wait much longer. Finally, he sighed, frustration mixed with desperation. Fine, play. But if this fails, you're responsible. Do you understand? I understand, Lena replied. Her heart was racing, but her voice was steady. The singer stepped aside, still embarrassed, but relieved that the situation was being addressed. The staff moved back, giving Lena space to approach the piano. Every step felt surreal. She felt the eyes of the staff, the managers, and even some guests who had noticed the activity inside, watching her closely. The piano looked larger and more intimidating up close, but it also felt like an old friend. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling the smooth, cold surface under her fingertips. The memory of years of practice flooded back to her. The hours she had spent learning, the notes she had memorized, the joy and comfort of music. For a moment, everything else faded. The panic, the stress, the strict rules of the wedding, all of it disappeared. There was only her and the piano, as if the instrument had been waiting for her all along. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the memories of her past music guide her. She remembered the melodies she loved, the songs that had been her companions in lonely moments, and the feeling of creating something beautiful from nothing. The bride, who had overheard the commotion, approached quietly. Her eyes were wide with surprise, curiosity, and a hint of hope. Can she really play? She asked one of the planners softly. I think so, the planner replied hesitantly. She said she can, but she's a waitress. I've never seen her play. The bride nodded slowly. Then let's see. Maybe it will be perfect. Lena opened her eyes and looked at the crowd outside, gathered in the garden. They were waiting, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. She took a deep breath and let her hands rest lightly on the keys. Then gently she pressed down, producing the first note. It was soft, clear, and perfectly timed. For a moment, the room was silent. Everyone paused to listen, even the staff who had doubted her. The note hung in the air, delicate but confident. Lena continued, letting her fingers move naturally, recalling the songs she had practiced countless times in her youth. The sound filled the hall, pure and flowing, weaving through the tension and replacing it with something magical. The manager froze, his mouth slightly open. He had expected something awkward or clumsy, but the music was neither. It was professional, elegant, and deeply moving. The singer, who had lost her voice, watched silently, tears brimming in her eyes. Some staff members covered their mouths, trying to hide their amazement. The bride's eyes sparkled, her hand covering her mouth as she whispered, It's beautiful. Outside, though the guests could not hear the piano clearly yet, they felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The murmur of voices softened, the restless children paused, and the tension that had been building disappeared. Something extraordinary was happening. Even if they could not see the details, Lena's fingers danced over the keys, moving naturally, as if no time had passed since she had last played. She did not think about the past, about the sacrifices she had made, or about the long years she had spent away from music. She only played, letting the melody carry her, letting it flow out into the room and touch everyone present. The manager finally exhaled, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over him. "I can't believe it," he muttered under his breath. She's incredible." Lena did not respond. She continued, her focus entirely on the music, on the feeling of creation, on the joy of doing what she loved. For the first time in years, she felt alive in a way she had almost forgotten. She felt proud, confident, and free all at the same time. The morning that had begun so predictably, with rules, schedules, and careful instructions, had now transformed into something extraordinary. Lena had stepped forward when no one else could, and in doing so, she had reminded everyone that sometimes the most unexpected people have the power to create moments that no one will ever forget. She did not yet know how the rest of the day would unfold, but for now, she had turned a problem into something beautiful. And even if no one else realized it yet, something had begun a story that would change the wedding, the guests, and her own life forever. The sound of the piano continued, rich and full, filling the hall and carrying out toward the garden, where the guests waited. And as the music flowed, Lena felt a quiet smile spreading across her face. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a musician, a creator, and perhaps, in this moment, a savior of the ceremony. The day had started as any other, ordinary and routine. But by stepping forward and trusting in her talent, Lena had shown that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when the moment called for courage, heart, and the willingness to embrace their true selves. She would remember this morning forever the tension, the uncertainty, the fear, and finally, the triumph. It was only the beginning, but it was already unforgettable, and the guests, still waiting outside, would soon witness the beginning of a wedding story they would talk about for years to come. The moment the last note faded from Lena's piano, the room seemed to hold its breath. For a few seconds, there was only silence, as if everyone was too stunned to move or speak. The bride's friends looked at one another, wide-eyed, whispering, "Did she really just do that?" Some staff leaned on tables, their mouths slightly open, unsure if they had just witnessed a miracle or a mistake. Lena's hands hovered briefly over the keys, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. She had expected applause, or at least some recognition, but the quiet was so thick that it made her doubt herself for a moment. Then, slowly, a sound broke the silence, clapping. It started small, uncertain, but grew quickly as more staff, the wedding planners, and even a few guests who had wandered inside, joined in. The manager, who had moments ago been tense and doubtful, now stood frozen with his hand halfway to his face, his jaw slowly dropping. "Unbelievable," he muttered to himself, shaking his head as he finally took a step closer to Lena. "I can't believe it. She actually pulled it off." Lena finally allowed herself to smile, a small, tentative curve of relief and pride. She had stepped into a situation that terrified her, had risked judgment and criticism, and yet, for a few moments, she had brought something pure and beautiful into the room. She had reminded herself, and now everyone else, that talent and heart could shine even in unexpected circumstances. The bride approached her slowly, eyes sparkling. "That was incredible," she said softly, almost as if she were afraid to break the magic of the moment. I didn't know anyone could do that. Thank you, truly. Lena felt her chest tighten. I just wanted to help, she replied, her voice calm but sincere. The bride reached out and touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture of gratitude that made Lena feel both humble and powerful at the same time. The staff gathered closer, some whispering excitedly, others still in disbelief. The pianist's quiet presence had shifted the mood entirely. What had started as panic and frustration had now become awe and admiration. Guests who had noticed the commotion inside were beginning to lean forward, trying to catch a glimpse of what had just occurred. But the situation was far from over. Outside, the wedding ceremony had not yet begun. The singer, who had lost her voice, was sitting off to the side, embarrassed or relieved that someone had stepped in. The planners looked at Lena, a mix of respect and uncertainty in their expressions. Can she really do the whole performance? One whispered to another. Yes, the other replied. I think she can. Did you hear that last piece? It was flawless. Even the manager, who had been skeptical and tense from the start, now looked almost amazed. He cleared his throat and said firmly, All right, we'll let her continue, but she must follow the schedule exactly. No mistakes, understood? Lena nodded quietly, her fingers still lightly resting on the keys. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her, the mix of fear and excitement that always came before a performance dot as she began to play again. This time for the guests in the garden, she adjusted slightly to accommodate the outdoor setting. Her fingers moved naturally, guided by memory and passion. She could hear the soft murmur of the crowd, the occasional rustle of clothing, and the faint whisper of leaves in the wind. She did not allow herself to become distracted. Every note, every chord had to be perfect. Guests outside began to notice. The music, their heads turning toward the building. The notes floated out through the open doors, gentle at first, then rising into a beautiful melody that carried through the garden. Some of the guests paused mid-conversation, their expressions softening as the music reached them. Children stopped running and looked around in wonder. Older relatives leaned closer to one another, whispering about the unexpected beauty of the sound. Even those who were focused on taking photos or talking on phones found themselves distracted, caught up in the pure, unexpected magic of the moment. Inside, Lena's focus was absolute. She felt her heart beating, her fingers moving almost of their own accord. Each chord, each note, resonated through the hall, through the piano, and beyond. For the first time in years, she felt entirely in her element, as if nothing else in. Life existed except her and the music. She remembered all the late nights spent practicing, all the sacrifices she had made, and all the moments she had doubted herself. And in that instant, all of it seemed worth it. The manager, watching from a distance, could hardly believe what he was seeing. His earlier irritation had melted into awe. He leaned back against a wall, his arms crossed, simply watching the young Waitress transform into a performer who could captivate an audience without even stepping onto a stage. He had seen many musicians in his time, but none who had emerged so unexpectedly, so gracefully, under such pressure. Meanwhile, the bride and groom had taken their positions in the garden, listening quietly as the music continued. The bride's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her bouquet, her eyes glistening with emotion. This is perfect, she whispered to her partner. I didn't expect it, but it's perfect. The groom nodded, a rare smile spreading. Across his face, relief and admiration mixing together. Some guests began recording the music on their phones, quietly capturing the moment. Others simply closed their eyes and listened, letting the melody fill their hearts. There was something profoundly human about the performance, an honesty and vulnerability that transcended the usual formality of a wedding. It was as if Lena's Music was telling a story, sharing a secret, inviting everyone present to feel something real. After several minutes, Lena paused briefly, letting the last note linger in the air. The room and garden fell silent for just a heartbeat, as if everyone was holding on, afraid to break the spell. Then slowly, applause began, growing louder and louder until it filled every corner of the hall and reached the ears of the waiting guests outside. Some clapped, some cheered, some even laughed with delight. The reaction was overwhelming, completely unexpected. Lena's hands rested on the keys, and she looked up, meeting the eyes of the bride and groom. They smiled broadly, their expressions a mix of astonishment and gratitude. She felt her own lips curl into a modest smile, a mixture of relief, pride, and something deeper, a recognition that she had done something meaningful, something that mattered. The manager approached cautiously, as if unsure how to address her after what had just happened. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice a mixture of respect and disbelief. "You saved the ceremony. Honestly, I didn't think anyone could do that. Not here, not like this." Lena nodded quietly, not seeking praise, only feeling the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had stepped up when it mattered most. The singer who had lost her voice also approached, offering a small, embarrassed smile. "Thank you for stepping in," she said softly. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't." Lena shook her head gently. "I just wanted to help," she replied, her voice steady, humble, and calm. The staff began whispering among themselves, still amazed. "Did you hear that?" "She's incredible," one said. "I never would have thought a waitress could play like that." Another added, "It's like she's a professional. She should be on stage, not serving tables." Their voices carried admiration, awe, and a touch of envy. Outside, the guests' curiosity had turned into genuine excitement. Many were moving closer to the hall, trying to get a better view. They could hear the piano more clearly now, the melody flowing through the open doors and spreading into the garden. Some paused mid-step, mesmerized by the unexpected beauty, while others whispered to one another, sharing their amazement. The bride, now fully aware of the impact, turned to the groom. "This is exactly what I wanted," she said softly, her voice full of emotion. "Even better than I imagined. Who would have thought a waitress could do something so extraordinary?" The groom nodded, a rare look of wonder on his face. "It's not just extraordinary," he said quietly. "It's unforgettable." Lena continued to play, letting herself flow with the music. She didn't stop to think about what might happen next, whether anyone would recognize her talent beyond this moment, or whether she would be remembered. She only focused on the music, on the joy of creating something beautiful and real, on the connection she felt with everyone present, even strangers. The hall and garden seemed to exist in their own world now. The ordinary rules, the schedule, and the strict instructions had faded. What mattered was the music, the feeling it created, and the human reactions it sparked. Guests were leaning forward, some moved to tears, others smiling softly, all sharing a moment of beauty and authenticity. Time seemed to stretch, minutes feeling like hours, as Lena played with a depth and confidence that surprised even herself. She had always known she loved music, but she had never felt this alive, this connected to others through her talent. Each note was not just sound. It was emotion, a story, a piece of her life she was finally sharing with the world. As the final notes echoed through the hall and into the garden, there was a long collective pause. Silence once again hung in the air, filled with anticipation and awe. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, applause and cheering erupted, louder than before. Guests clapped their hands, some stood up, some called out words of praise, and everyone in the hall turned toward Lena with wide eyes and warm smiles. The bride rushed inside, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "That was more than I could have hoped for. You made this day unforgettable." Lena nodded quietly, feeling both humbled and proud. She had not only helped the wedding proceed, but had created something unforgettable, something that would be remembered long after the day ended. The manager finally stepped forward, a mixture of relief and astonishment in his expression. You're remarkable," he said simply. "I misjudged you. We all did. Thank you for stepping up." Lena smiled softly, not needing further praise. The satisfaction of having trusted herself, of having risen to the occasion, was enough. Even the staff, once skeptical and doubtful, now looked at her with admiration. She had not just played a song. She had changed the energy of the entire wedding, brought calm where there was tension, and left an unforgettable impression on everyone who had witnessed it. In that moment, Lena realized something profound. Sometimes, the most extraordinary moments in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes, the person no one notices, the person who blends into the background, can be the one to create magic, to inspire, to change the course of events with courage, skill, and heart. She didn't know what would come next, what opportunities might arise, or how her life would be affected by this one act of bravery. But for now, she allowed herself to simply breathe, to feel the warmth of appreciation, and to savor the quiet, powerful joy of knowing she had done something truly remarkable. The wedding, once teetering on the edge of disappointment, now had a spark of magic that no one would forget. And for Lena, the day was no longer ordinary. It was a beginning, an unexpected, beautiful beginning that had started with courage, a piano, and a willingness to step forward when the moment called. The excitement and energy from Lena's piano performance still lingered in the hall, but a quiet tension returned almost immediately as everyone realized the ceremony itself had not yet fully started. The bride and groom were waiting outside in the garden, the guests seated and growing slightly impatient. Lena had given them a glimpse of something extraordinary, but now the pressure returned. The music needed to continue, the schedule needed to be followed, and the wedding had to proceed perfectly. Lena took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her fingers hovered over the keys once more, the polished black surface gleaming under the soft lights. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, not just for the wedding, but for herself. She had stepped forward unexpectedly, revealed her hidden talent, and now everyone expected her to perform flawlessly. It was exhilarating, but it was also terrifying. She had not prepared for an entire wedding performance, and yet here she was, the center of attention, responsible for the success of an event she had only come to serve. The bride approached cautiously, her hands still trembling from the earlier rush of emotion. "Are you sure you can continue?" she asked softly. Her voice was filled with hope, but also concern, as if she wanted to make sure Lena wasn't overextending herself. Lena smiled, gently, the kind of calm, quiet smile that comes from inner resolve rather than pride. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll do my best. Just tell me what you need me to play next." The bride nodded and explained the next part of the ceremony, a sequence of pieces that would accompany the bride's walk down the aisle, the exchange of vows, and a few background songs during the formal photographs afterward. Lena listened, carefully, memorizing each piece in her mind while preparing her fingers to move across the keys. She knew that every note mattered, every pause and chord had to be perfect. This was no longer just a moment of improvisation. This was her proving ground, a test of skill, patience, and presence of mind. Outside, the garden was alive with anticipation. Guests had grown curious about the music and were leaning forward, murmuring among themselves, wondering who was playing. Some whispered to each other, guessing whether it was a hired musician, a friend, or someone unknown who had magically appeared at the right moment. Children tugged at their parents' hands, pointing toward the building, their faces filled with innocent wonder. The bride and groom stood at the front, holding hands, their eyes occasionally glancing toward the doors, as if hoping for reassurance that everything would go smoothly. Inside, Lena positioned herself at the piano, her body calm, but her mind alert. She began playing the first piece of the sequence, soft and steady, letting the music set the tone for the ceremony. She noticed the guests leaning closer to the windows, trying to catch the sound, and she adjusted her playing slightly so it would carry more easily into the garden. Each note was deliberate, precise, yet infused with feeling, a perfect balance of technical skill and emotional resonance. As she played, memories from her past began to surface. She remembered the long afternoons spent practicing in her small room at home, her fingers dancing over the keys while the sunlight streamed through the window. She remembered the teachers who had praised her talent, the competitions she had entered, and the applause she had received long ago. Those moments had felt fleeting at the time, interrupted by the responsibilities that life demanded of her. But now they seemed to return with a gentle force, reminding her that talent, when nurtured, never truly disappears. The first piece ended with a soft, lingering note, and Lena paused briefly, letting it resonate through the hall. Outside, the guests reacted almost instinctively. Some clapped lightly, unsure if it was appropriate yet, while others simply smiled, moved by the unexpected beauty of the music. Even the staff, who had been skeptical at first, looked on with awe, whispering quietly to each other about the astonishing skill Lena displayed. The bride approached the doors again, checking to see if everything was ready for her entrance. The groom gave a reassuring nod, his nervous smile steadying her own jitters. The wedding planners whispered last-minute instructions, adjusting the positions of chairs and making sure cameras were ready for photos. Everything was in motion, but the music remained the anchor, the steady, soothing thread that tied the chaos together. Lena's fingers moved again, starting the next piece. This one was more delicate, requiring both subtlety and emotion. She leaned slightly forward, letting her body follow the rhythm, feeling each note resonate through her chest. The room seemed to quiet itself around her, as if even the air was listening. Outside, the garden guests could hear the melody now, soft and clear, filling the space with warmth. Some guests paused mid-conversation, their attention captured entirely by the unexpected performance. The bride began her walk down the aisle, moving gracefully to the sound of Lena's piano. Every step seemed to match the tempo, the rhythm of the music guiding her gently forward. She clutched her bouquet tightly, her eyes glistening with tears. She tried to hide behind a calm expression. The groom's gaze was fixed on her, admiration and love shining clearly. Even the children walking alongside her seemed to sense the importance of the moment, stepping lightly, careful not to disturb the delicate atmosphere. The guests watched, silently, captivated by the harmony of movement and sound. Lena's music seemed to tell a story, one that needed no words. The joy of love, the anticipation of commitment, the beauty of human connection. Every note she played seemed to echo the emotions in the garden, the nervous excitement, the heartfelt hope, and the shared sense of witnessing something rare and precious. As the bride reached the front and turned to face her partner, Lena transitioned into the next piece, a gentle melody meant to accompany the exchange of vows. Her fingers moved with precision, yet each chord carried warmth and tenderness. The bride and groom spoke their words quietly, softly, their voices blending with the music rather than competing with it. Guests leaned closer, listening intently, some dabbing their eyes with tissues as emotions welled up unexpectedly. Lena noticed the subtle changes in the room, the way the staff straightened up, no longer tense but attentive, the way the planners exchanged impressed glances, The way the manager, standing at a distance, smiled quietly, no longer worried about the schedule, but completely absorbed in the moment. She realized that music had become more than just sound. Here, it was a bridge between people, a way to share feelings that words could not convey. The vows continued, intimate and heartfelt. Lena's playing adapted naturally, softening during moments of quiet reflection, rising slightly during moments of shared emotion. She felt a deep connection with the couple, even though she barely knew them. In that moment, she understood the power of music, not just as entertainment, but as a way to communicate, to support, to enhance life's most meaningful moments. After the vows, the couple exchanged rings, and Lena moved into a brighter, more celebratory piece, signaling the transition from solemnity to joy. The guests responded immediately, some clapping softly, others smiling broadly, caught up in the uplifting energy. Children laughed lightly as they moved around the front, and older guests whispered to each other, remarking on how perfectly the music matched the emotions of the ceremony. The bride and groom turned to face their friends and family, hands clasped tightly together, smiles wide and genuine. Lena continued to play, her fingers flowing over the keys naturally, allowing her passion and skill to carry the music forward. She noticed the subtle ways the crowd responded, heads turning, hands clasping, eyes glistening, and she allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had not only helped save the ceremony, she had elevated it, made it unforgettable. As the music shifted to the final piece for this segment of the ceremony, Lena's thoughts wandered briefly. She thought about her past, the choices she had made, the sacrifices she had taken on to support her family. She realized that all those experiences had led her to this moment, had prepared her to step up when no one else could. She felt proud, not just of her talent, but of herself, the resilience, courage, and dedication that had brought her here. The piece ended with a soft, lingering chord, and for a moment there was silence. The garden guests erupted into applause, some standing, some cheering, all moved by the beauty and unexpectedness of what they had witnessed. The bride and groom turned toward the building, their eyes shining, mouths open in astonishment and gratitude. "She's incredible," the bride whispered again, shaking her head in disbelief. "Absolutely incredible." Lena rose from the piano slowly, her hands resting lightly on the keys as she looked around. The manager approached, a mixture of relief and admiration on his face. "I can't believe it," he said softly. "I didn't expect anyone could do this under pressure. You've gone beyond saving the ceremony. You've made it unforgettable." Lena nodded quietly, a modest smile on her face, acknowledging the praise without letting it define her. Even the staff, who had been skeptical and doubtful at first, now looked at her with respect and admiration. She had transformed from a quiet, unnoticed presence into the hero of the day, someone who had turned a potential disaster into a moment of magic. Her courage, talent, and calm under pressure had made all the difference. The bride approached once more, extending her hand. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I don't know how to ever repay you. You didn't just play music. You created memories we will never forget." Lena shook her hand gently. "I didn't do it for reward," she replied softly. "I just wanted to help." Outside, the guests continued to whisper excitedly among themselves. "Who is she?" one asked. "Where did she come from?" another replied. "She's amazing. I've never heard anything like it at a wedding before." The energy in the garden shifted from curiosity to genuine admiration, a collective appreciation of something unexpected and wonderful. Lena's heart swelled quietly as she realized the impact she had made. The music had done more than accompany a ceremony. It had connected people, created emotion, and left a lasting impression on everyone present. She understood now that this moment, this day, was not just about her playing the piano. It was about courage, stepping forward when it mattered, and allowing her true self to shine in a world that often demanded she stay in the background. As the bride and groom prepared to proceed with the next part of the ceremony, Lena allowed herself a small, private smile. She had faced uncertainty, pressure, and doubt, and had risen above it. The day was far from over, but she knew deep in her heart that she had already changed the course of the wedding in a way no one would forget. And somewhere, deep inside her, she felt the stirring of something new: hope, possibility, and the quiet realization that perhaps this was only the beginning of a remarkable journey. The hall was now buzzing with a mixture of excitement and admiration. Lena had played her pieces flawlessly, filling the space with music that seemed to touch every person in it. The guests were still talking quietly about the performance, their faces alight with wonder. Some had not expected to hear such emotion and skill at a wedding. Many whispered to one another, trying to guess who she was and how she could play so beautifully under pressure. The energy in the room had shifted completely. What had started as a stressful, almost chaotic morning was now transformed into something extraordinary. Lena, however, did not pause to think about the attention. She moved back to the piano as she prepared for the next set of music. This time, the songs were meant for the reception, a series of cheerful and celebratory pieces that would accompany the arrival of the food and drinks, and later, the start of dancing. She felt a mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. Her hands trembled slightly, but she drew in a deep breath, steadying herself. She reminded herself that the music was not just for the guests, not just for the couple, it was for her as well. This was her moment, her chance to step fully into the talent she had kept hidden for so long. The guests outside had begun to trickle into the hall, curious about the source of the music. Some had never attended a wedding with live performances, and certainly not one where the music felt so personal, so genuine. Children paused in their playful running, turning toward the open doors as the melody carried into the hall. Even the older guests, who were usually focused on conversations or capturing the day through photographs, stopped to listen. There was something almost magnetic about the sound, a quiet, irresistible pull that drew everyone in. Lena began the first piece for the reception with soft, flowing chords. The tune was lively yet elegant, perfect for the transition from ceremony to celebration. She allowed herself to feel the rhythm, letting her body move slightly with the music, while her fingers glided effortlessly over the keys. Her memory guided. Her hands, recalling the hours of practice she had spent years ago, the countless songs she had learned, and the emotions she had poured into each note. The manager, who had been skeptical and tense earlier, now watched from the side with a quiet, amazed smile. He could hardly believe that a simple waitress had transformed into such a commanding presence at the piano. His earlier doubts had vanished, replaced by admiration and respect. He whispered quietly to one of the planners, "I never imagined. She's incredible. We were lucky she stepped forward." Lena's music flowed through the hall, filling every corner, every space, with warmth and joy. She noticed how the guests were reacting, heads nodding in rhythm, soft smiles spreading across faces, and eyes bright with excitement. Some were leaning closer to the piano, as if hoping to catch the subtle nuances in her playing. Others simply closed their eyes, allowing the music to wash over them, feeling every chord as if it were speaking directly to their hearts. The bride and groom were now seated at the head table, holding hands, their eyes occasionally glancing toward Lena. They were captivated, not only by her talent, but by the timing and courage that had allowed her to step in so unexpectedly. The bride whispered softly to her partner, "I never imagined it could be like this. She's not just playing music, she's creating memories for all of us." The groom nodded, a quiet smile on his face, a sense of deep gratitude filling him as Lena transitioned into the next piece, a more playful and rhythmic melody. The mood in the room shifted. Guests who had been quietly admiring the music now began to sway gently in their seats, tapping their fingers on tables or nodding their heads along with the rhythm. Children giggled quietly, their laughter blending with the music, creating a joyful harmony. Even the staff, who had been bustling and stressed earlier, paused to listen, caught up in the infectious energy of the performance. The music was no longer just a series of notes. It had become a bridge between everyone present. It connected the bride and groom to their guests, the staff to the guests, and Lena to everyone in the room. The power of her playing was not only in technical skill, but in the emotion she conveyed. Through every chord, every pause, every rise and fall of the melody, each note seemed to tell a story of hope, courage, and the beauty of stepping forward when it mattered most. As the reception continued, Lena noticed the subtle interactions of the guests. Couples smiled at each other more warmly, friends laughed more freely, and family members leaned closer, sharing whispered comments about the music and the atmosphere. Even strangers exchanged glances and soft smiles, united by the experience of witnessing something extraordinary. The room, which had felt tense and controlled earlier in the day, now pulsed with life and energy, all connected by Lena's music. At one point, the bride approached the piano again, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "This is incredible," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "You've made everything so special. No one will ever forget this day." Lena looked up and smiled quietly. "I'm just happy to help," she replied modestly, though inside a warm pride began to blossom. She realized that her talent, once hidden and nearly forgotten, had not only saved the wedding, but had enhanced it in a way that left a lasting impression on everyone. The manager, now fully relaxed, walked closer to Lena, watching her fingers move with precision and grace. He could see the passion in her eyes, the confidence that had replaced the initial nervousness. "I have to admit," he said quietly, almost to himself, "I underestimated you. You've turned what could have been a disaster into something unforgettable. I don't know how to thank you." Lena shook her head gently. "I don't need thanks," she replied. "I just wanted to do what I could." As the music continued, a photographer approached Lena cautiously, camera in hand. "Would you mind if I took some photos?" he asked. This is amazing, and I want to capture it." Lena nodded, a little shyly. "Sure," she said, continuing to play, now aware that her performance was being immortalized in images as well as in memories. She felt a strange mixture of nervousness and excitement, knowing that the moment was being documented in ways that might reach far beyond the hall. Guests began to talk more animatedly, commenting on how unexpected and remarkable Lena's performance had been. "She's not just a waitress," one said. "She's a true musician. Have you ever seen anything like this at a wedding?" Another replied, "I've been to dozens of weddings, and this is the first time I've felt so moved by the music. She's extraordinary." Their words, though spoken quietly, carried a warmth and admiration that filled the room even more than the music itself. The bride and groom stood briefly to thank Lena once again, their smiles wide and sincere. "You've made our day more than perfect," the bride said softly. "You've made it magical." Lena felt her heart swell at the words. She had only wanted to help, but the depth of their gratitude and the joy in the room touched her in a way she had not expected. She realized that her music had done more than accompany the wedding. It had brought people together, created shared memories, and left an impact that would be remembered for a long time. The reception continued with a light, joyful energy. Guests moved closer to the dance floor, encouraged by the cheerful melodies Lena played. Children ran and laughed freely, while adults swayed gently or tapped their feet in rhythm. Friends and family shared smiles, laughter, and quiet conversations, all while the music filled the spaces in between. Lena noticed the subtle ways her performance influenced the mood, guiding the energy of the room without being intrusive. As she transitioned into a slightly faster piece, a ripple of excitement moved through the guests. Some clapped along, while others hummed softly, drawn into the melody. The piano seemed to pulse with life, carrying the emotions of the day directly into the hearts of everyone present. Lena felt a sense of connection she had not experienced in years, a reminder of why she had once loved music so deeply. Even the staff, who had been focused on logistics and schedules earlier, began to relax and enjoy the music. They whispered to each other in awe, commenting on Lena's skill and the way she had managed to transform a stressful situation into something beautiful. The manager, who had initially doubted her, now looked on with admiration and respect, realizing that Lena's presence had not only saved the day, but elevated it beyond anyone's expectations. The bride and groom, now fully immersed in the joy of the moment, held hands and smiled at each other. The music had allowed them to breathe, to feel the love and support of their friends and family, and to enjoy their day in a way that might have been impossible otherwise. Lena continued to play, aware of the subtle ways her music was weaving through the crowd, creating moments of happiness, reflection, and shared emotion. As the reception went on, Lena noticed a few guests approaching her, quietly thanking her or complimenting her skill. Some were hesitant, unsure if they should interrupt, but their words were sincere and heartfelt. "You made this wedding unforgettable," one guest said softly. "I've never experienced anything like this before. Thank you." Lena nodded, quietly, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm just glad I could help," she replied. The sincerity in her voice, combined with the beauty of her music, left a lasting impression on everyone she spoke to. Throughout the afternoon, Lena played a series of pieces that flowed seamlessly from one to the next. Each song was chosen carefully, adapted to the mood of the moment, and delivered with precision and emotion. She felt the energy of the room, the reactions of the guests, and the quiet satisfaction of the bride and groom. Every note she played seemed to matter, not just as music, but as a thread connecting everyone present. By the time the meal was served, Lena had become the quiet hero of the wedding. Her performance had transformed the atmosphere, lifted spirits, and created memories that would be cherished long after the day ended. Even those who had initially been skeptical could not deny the magic she had brought. The manager, the staff, the bride and groom, and the guests all recognized that something extraordinary had happened, something that had started with courage, talent, and a willingness to step forward when it was needed most. As the piano played on softly in the background, Lena felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only helped save the wedding, but had created a moment of genuine human connection, something far more valuable than praise or recognition. She realized that her love for music, once set aside for responsibility and necessity, had found its way back into her life in the most unexpected and meaningful way. The reception continued, filled with laughter, music, and shared joy. Lena's performance became the heartbeat of the event, guiding the energy of the room and connecting every guest to the story unfolding around them. She had taken a simple opportunity to help and turned it into something unforgettable, something that would be remembered for years to come. By the end of the afternoon, Lena had played more than anyone could have anticipated. Each piece, each note, each pause had been filled with heart, precision, and an unmistakable love for music. The guests, now relaxed and happy, shared smiles, stories, and admiration, all of it tied together by the piano and the woman who had stepped forward when the day needed her most. And as Lena finally rested her hands on the keys, the room erupted in applause once again. louder and more heartfelt than ever before. She allowed herself a quiet smile, knowing that this was not just the end of a performance. It was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where her courage, talent, and heart had finally been recognized and celebrated. The evening sun began to cast a warm golden glow through the windows of the wedding hall, illuminating the faces of the guests as they laughed, talked, and enjoyed the celebration. The energy in the room was light and joyful, but beneath it, a quiet sense of awe lingered. Everyone who had been present that day felt as though they had witnessed something rare and extraordinary. Lena had not only saved the wedding, she had transformed it, leaving an imprint on the hearts of all who attended Dot as the final courses of the meal were cleared. The bride and groom stood to make their first dance announcement. Lena had already prepared the music, the soft, flowing notes, filling the room in anticipation of the moment. Guests instinctively moved closer to the dance floor, their faces bright with expectation. Children stopped their playful chatter, and even the adults leaned forward, eager to experience the next chapter of the wedding. Guided by Lena's music, Lena's fingers moved across the keys with ease, creating a melody that was tender, romantic, and filled with emotion. She could feel the energy of the crowd, the quiet anticipation, and the love that radiated from the couple at the center of it all. Every note was deliberate, yet natural, carrying a story of connection, hope, and celebration. She had become more than just a pianist. She had become the thread weaving the entire day together. The pulse of the celebration. The bride's dress shimmered under the soft light as she stepped onto the dance floor, her hand resting lightly in the groom's. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to fade away. The music carried them forward, every note aligning with their movements, every chord expressing the emotions they felt, but could not put into words. Guests watched silently, captivated by the intimacy and beauty of the dance, each person touched in their own way by the combination of movement and sound. Lena continued to play, her body relaxed but fully present, her mind focused on every nuance of the piece. She noticed subtle details, the way the groom's hand held the bride's a little tighter during a dip, the gentle sway of her dress, the quiet smiles of friends and family around them. Each detail influenced her playing, and in turn, her music influenced the energy of the room. It was a delicate, beautiful exchange, a conversation without words, and Lena reveled in it quietly, feeling a deep connection to the moment. The manager, standing near the side of the room, watched with admiration and relief. He had witnessed a simple waitress become the heart of the wedding, her music turning what could have been a stressful, forgettable day into an event that would be remembered for years. He whispered quietly to a staff member nearby, "I never thought I'd see anything like this. She's incredible. Absolutely incredible." The staff member nodded, equally impressed, still in awe of Lena's composure and skill under pressure. Guests who had been taking photos now lowered their cameras, drawn in by the beauty and authenticity of the moment. Some smiled, some wiped away small tears, and others simply stood in quiet admiration. The music was no longer background, it was the center of attention, guiding the emotions of everyone in the room, binding them together in a shared experience of joy, love, and connection. As the dance continued, Lena transitioned into a slightly more playful melody, light and lively, capturing the excitement and happiness that surrounded the couple. Guests began to smile more broadly, some tapping their feet to the rhythm, others quietly moving closer to the dance floor. Children giggled and twirled, mimicking the adults, and a few older relatives leaned in to whisper comments about how magical the moment felt. The bride and groom laughed softly, their steps light and carefree, fully immersed in the music and the joy of the evening. Lena adjusted her playing subtly, following the energy of the room, allowing the melody to rise and fall naturally with the flow of movement and emotion. She felt as though she were part of something far larger than herself, a living, breathing celebration of love, hope, and human connection. As the dance reached its climax, Lena added gentle flourishes to the music, creating moments of anticipation, surprise, and delight. The crowd responded instinctively, leaning in closer, clapping lightly in rhythm, and smiling at the spontaneity of it all. Even the staff, who had spent the day managing logistics and schedules, found themselves drawn into the energy, nodding along and exchanging glances of shared wonder. After the first dance concluded, Lena transitioned into a cheerful, upbeat tune that signaled the start of the general dancing. Guests rose from their seats, some hesitantly at first, others with enthusiasm, moving toward the floor. Couples twirled, friends laughed as they joined hands, and the room came alive with movement. Lena's playing guided the tempo and mood, her fingers moving with confidence and fluidity, creating an atmosphere that was both celebratory and heartfelt. The bride's friends approached the piano cautiously, curious and eager to compliment. "Lena, that was unbelievable," one whispered. "We've never seen anything like this. You've made this wedding so special." Lena smiled quietly, nodding in thanks. She felt warmth in her chest, not from praise, but from the knowledge that her music was bringing people together, helping them experience joy and connection in a way that words alone could never achieve. Groom noticed the subtle attention being given to Lena and leaned over to the bride, whispering, "She's more than just a musician. She's part of this wedding now. Everyone will remember her." The bride nodded, her eyes glistening with tears of gratitude and happiness. "I can't believe how lucky we were," she replied softly. She didn't just play music. She made everything perfect. As the evening continued, Lena maintained a seamless flow of music, carefully balancing between energetic, lively pieces for dancing and softer, tender melodies for moments of reflection. Guests moved freely, their laughter and conversation blending, with the piano creating a vibrant tapestry of sound and human connection. The hall felt alive, filled with warmth, joy, and the unmistakable magic of a day that had been transformed by courage and talent. At one point, the manager approached Lena once more, his expression both awed and sincere. "I need to tell you again," he said quietly. "I underestimated you. I thought you were just a waitress, but you've done something extraordinary. You've changed the entire day." Lena shook her head gently, a modest smile on her face. "I just did what I could," she replied. "I wanted to help make the day special. That's all." Even the staff, who had been rushing and organizing all day, paused for a moment to watch her play. They whispered among themselves about her skill, her composure, and the way she had turned a potential disaster into something unforgettable. Some of them had been skeptical at first, but now they looked at her with admiration and quiet respect. She had shown them the power of courage, talent, and dedication in the most unexpected way. The reception went on, the energy in the room vibrant and unrelenting. Lena played a series of pieces that carried the guests from laughter to reflection, from playful moments to tender ones. Every note seemed to tell a story, every pause held meaning, and every chord resonated with the shared emotions of the room. She had become more than a performer. She had become the heartbeat of the wedding, the invisible force guiding the celebration with grace and skill. Guests began to approach her intermittently, quietly thanking her or complimenting her performance. Some were shy, hesitant to interrupt, but their words were sincere and heartfelt. "You've made this day unforgettable," one whispered. "We'll never forget your music." Lena nodded gently, accepting the praise with humility, her satisfaction rooted not in recognition, but in the joy she could feel spreading through the room. The bride and groom, now fully immersed in the celebration, danced freely, laughed openly, and interacted with their guests without worry. The music had allowed them to relax, to savor their day, and to experience the love and support of everyone around them. Lena's performance had given them more than accompaniment. It had given them a living, breathing soundtrack to their joy. And connection. As the evening deepened, Lena continued to play, seamlessly shifting between pieces that matched the changing energy of the room. Guests danced, laughed, and shared quiet moments of conversation, all under the guidance of the piano. She could feel the collective mood, the ebb and flow of excitement, and responded naturally, allowing the music to reflect the life and warmth of the celebration. The manager, finally able to relax fully, watched from a distance. He saw how Lena had taken control of the day's emotions, how she had transformed tension into joy, and how she had connected everyone in a shared experience that would be remembered forever. He whispered to one of the staff, "She didn't just save the wedding, she made it extraordinary. We'll never forget this." Even the photographer approached Lena once more, quietly asking if he could capture a few more images. "This moment, this energy, it's incredible," he said softly. Lena nodded, continuing to play while allowing the camera to capture her at work. She felt a quiet sense of pride, knowing that her performance was not just temporary. It was being recorded, remembered, and celebrated in images, as well as in hearts. As the night drew on, Lena noticed the subtle ways her music had affected everyone present. Guests moved more freely, laughter echoed more clearly, and smiles were brighter than they had been earlier in the day. Children ran and played safely, adults connected more openly, and even strangers shared quiet glances of understanding and appreciation. The music had created a bridge between all of them, a shared experience of beauty, joy, and humanity. Eventually, the bride and groom stood to make a few closing remarks, thanking their guests, the staff, and of course Lena. "This day has been more than we ever dreamed," the bride said, her voice filled with emotion. "And it's all thanks to her. She didn't just play music, she created memories that we will cherish forever." The groom nodded, his own voice shaking slightly with emotion. "We are so grateful. You've turned our wedding into something truly magical." Lena's heart swelled quietly at their words. She had not sought recognition or praise, but the gratitude she felt in that moment was deeply fulfilling. She realized that her music had touched lives in a way she had never imagined, creating moments of connection, joy, and beauty that would last far beyond the wedding day. As the evening wound down, the guests slowly began to depart, offering warm farewells and heartfelt thanks to both the couple and to Lena. Many lingered for a few extra moments, hoping to witness one final piece, one last touch of the magic that had carried them through the day. Lena played gently, a soft, flowing melody that left the room in a peaceful, reflective mood. By the time the last guests had left, Lena was alone in the hall, the piano softly echoing the final notes. She sat quietly, her hands resting on the keys, reflecting on the day. What had begun as a stressful, uncertain morning had turned into a day of triumph, connection, and unforgettable memories. She realized that her courage, her willingness to step forward, and her talent had made all the difference. Not just for the couple, but for everyone present. The manager approached one final time, his expression a mix of admiration and humility. "I don't know how to ever thank you properly," he said. "You've done something extraordinary here, something none of us will forget." Lena smiled softly, the warmth of the day still resonating in her chest. "I'm just glad I could help," she said simply. As she closed the piano and turned off the lights, Lena felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The wedding had been saved, transformed, and elevated by music, courage, and the willingness to embrace opportunity. She realized that her life, too, had changed that day. She had stepped out of the background, revealed her true self, and discovered that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the most unforgettable experiences. The hall was empty now, but the memories remained echoing in the hearts of the bride and groom, the guests, and Lena herself. She knew that this day, this experience would stay with her forever. It was more than a performance. It was a testament to the power of courage, talent, and the human spirit. As Lena walked out into the night, the cool air brushing against her face, she felt a quiet smile spread across her lips. The wedding had ended, but something far greater had begun, a story of possibility, of discovery, and of the extraordinary potential hidden in ordinary moments. She had stepped forward when it mattered most, and in doing so, she had changed the course of the day, touched countless lives, and found a new sense of confidence and purpose within herself. The stars began to shine above as she walked away from the hall, the sound of laughter and music still echoing faintly behind her. Lena knew that life had opened a new door for her that day. She had learned that courage and talent, combined with heart, could create unforgettable moments, and that the ordinary could become extraordinary with a single choice, a single act, and the willingness to step forward. And in that quiet, starry night, Lena felt a sense of peace, pride, and hope, a recognition that her life, like the wedding she had transformed, was now full of endless possibilities.